This amphibian vehicle drives on land and on water. It's fun, safe, and useful.
Wouldn't you like to drive one of these things to work? But you can't because government says no.
But government says yes to the chosen ones, like sugar producers, big banks, and members of Congress.
Taxi!
Established taxi companies get government protection at the expense of cool new options like Uber.
Trying to gut the ability for companies like mine to operate.
Then something completely different. Glenn Beck now says he's libertarian.
Change of opinion here, big change of opinion.
Good, because when government gives some people special privileges, that deprives us of good things like this.
Your government protects the chosen ones. That's our show tonight!
And now, John Stossel.
The chosen ones are what we call people selected by government to get special favors. Now, if you want to give someone a favor, fine. If some rich business wants to, fine. They and you spend your own money. And unlike government, you can't use force. But government uses force when it gives out favors. It taxes you and me to give money and often special privileges to chosen ones, usually rich people with connections. And as government grows, it gives out more favors, like handouts to green, so-called green energy companies, or union car makers. And most recently, the really big money went to bankers on Wall Street. This causes a great deformation and corruption of capitalism, says a former Reagan budget director who just wrote a book about that, David Stockman. So what do you mean the great deformation?
The state has failed. It's overwhelmed. Fiscally, it is out of control. It is paralyzed because it can't make decisions because it's trying to do too much. And in the process, the private economy is being badly harmed, deeply undermined as a result of trying to make it better. In other words, the Keynesian premise that we've had for decades is turning out to be upside down.
The defenders of state intervention cite the housing bubble bursting. They had to come in and rescue the banks, they say.
Well, I don't think that's remotely accurate. I think that's an urban legend. I've addressed this. I call it the BlackBerry Panic of 2008.
Why the BlackBerry Panic?
Because all of the key policymakers, Paulson and all the guys running around the Treasury, were carrying around this diagnostic tool, the BlackBerry. They were watching the stock price of Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. They were looking at credit spreads. They were looking at stock market indices and so forth. And I say it's a fundamentally wrong way to make policy. You can't let the boys and girls and robots on Wall Street drive policy, which is exactly what was happening. There was only a failure going on in the canyons of Wall Street. The Main Street banking system was not in trouble in September 2008.
But what they were seeing on their BlackBerries were prices crashing, what seemed like that the whole system would freeze up, and that would cause massive hardship.
Well, that was the lurid story told over and over by Paulson.
And people still believe it, not just Paulson.
Well, he was driving the thing. Bernanke is the greatest money printer, Keynesian monetary central
These
planner.
are smart guys. They said,
yes.
I'll give you a quote. Paulson, this bold approach will cost American families far less than the alternative.
How did he possibly know? He couldn't have known. If you read his memoir, he says, I got a call from Lloyd Blankfein at Goldman Sachs. He's worried the shorts are coming after Morgan Stanley. They'll take it down. I'm going to be next. You have to do something. Guess what happened? They bailed out Morgan Stanley. They went after TARP and all the rest of the stuff.
If Goldman and Morgan went down,
it would have not made any difference.
There would have been a credit freeze.
No, there wouldn't have. That is just a lot of baloney, okay? This is the urban legend that has been repeated over and over because basically the cronies of capitalism had pulled the coup d'etat. George Bush was clueless. He had no idea what was going on.
He said, I've abandoned free market principles to save the free market.
Well, I mean, that's as kind of silly as almost everything else he said. AIG was not a contagious disease. It was not going to cause a huge problem. We can look at that. The Main Street banks were not going to go into a huge retail bank run. The money market funds were not going to collapse and cause the economic system to go down a black hole. And Bernanke's totally wrong when he says we were on the verge of Depression 2.0. We weren't close. We would have worked our way through it. We've done it many times in history before. And this, as I say, was a Wall Street coup d'etat that really needs to be understood because, frankly, they're just doing the same thing over and over.
So why then, when the Republicans seemed like they were going to vote against the bailout, did the stock market drop 700-plus points?
Because the stock market is a whore. It's a totally dishonest place.
Predictive place. They were worried.
No. The stock market, I know that a lot of conservatives and free market people think, well, the stock market is pricing, discounting the future. The market believes the job of the taxpayer in America is to open his veins whenever necessary with fiscal subventions, with monetary largesse, whatever it takes to keep the stock index rising, because that's what the speculators want. This is why we're in trouble, because both parties have basically thrown in the towel and are essentially just aggregating mechanisms for special interest groups that are plundering the state.
And the special interest group, in this case, it's the chosen one, are the banks.
If they're too big to fail, they're too big to exist. They need to be broken up. They're dangerous. We have done nothing.
If you say break them up, that's giving government more power.
No, it isn't, because the way I would break them up is very simply saying, you want to be big and huge and be a danger to the whole financial system? Fine. You can't go to the Fed window. You don't have deposit insurance. You want to be free enterprise? Get out there in the market and compete.
Well, I think we'd be on better footing, but you and I are sure in the minority about this. I hope others will get more skeptical about bailouts. Thank you, David Stockman. And, of course, it's not just Wall Street that's politically connected. When government's big special privileges go to all kinds of rich people. Take farm programs. Farmers are richer than the average American. Why should they get money? Also, you'd assume the handouts would at least go to the neediest farmers, but actually...
Who benefits? Mostly rich farmers and people like Bon Jovi, who owns acres of land in New Jersey but pays only $100 in state property tax. Because he raises honeybees, he qualifies for a honeybee subsidy. Bruce Springsteen owns hundreds of acres of land, but pays little tax on it because an organic farmer works his land. His poorer neighbors pay more.
It's unfair that I have to pay for an acre and a half $6,000, and then they're paying for hundreds of acres for $200.
And it's unfair that I once collected from another government program subsidized flood insurance.
Years ago, I built this beach house. That's younger me there. The house was on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. A risky place to build, but I built anyway, 'cause a federal program guaranteed my investment. Eventually, a storm swept away my first floor, but I didn't lose a penny. Thanks. I never invited you there, but you paid for my new first floor. Then the whole house went. Government flood insurance covered my loss and many others.
I'm ashamed of doing that. I was young. I won't do it again. It's just one of many examples of the special privileges for the chosen ones that Tim Crony covers. He's a reporter for the Washington Examiner. So what else?
Well, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was a huge sort of crony capitalism, corporate welfare bailout for all the companies that got at the table with Obama. I think the biggest winner was probably the drug companies that actually had a hand in writing the bill and ended up helping out all the Democrats who supported it.
How did they get helped?
One thing is they got long exclusivity on their drugs, meaning you couldn't get generics for 12 years on some of these drugs. Another thing is that they got all sorts of taxpayer subsidies. Then finally, the individual mandate that forces you to buy health insurance, it's going to force you to buy drug insurance whether you like it or not.
So you could say the companies were smart. They're saying, oh, if Obamacare's coming, we want to be in on it.
Well, I don't think Obamacare would have even passed without the drug companies.
And by contrast, the medical device makers, they got hit with a fat tax. You're saying they weren't clever enough to pay cronies, lobbyists, to get close to Obama?
Yeah, you've got to get at the table first, and you have to be very generous in your campaign contributions. The health insurers at first were on board with this, then they backed off supporting some of the bill. They ended up getting whacked pretty hard by the bill.
Then there's the Import-Export Bank.
The Export-Import Bank is a government agency that just subsidizes U.S. exports. 80% of their loan guarantee dollars subsidize one company, Boeing.
But it's good for America if they sell more planes.
It's good for Boeing, but if you guarantee a loan to Boeing, that means some other company isn't getting that loan. Think about if you're in the position of a bank. You could loan the money to company A or to Boeing. Government is going to back up your loan to Boeing. Boeing gets it. Company A loses out.
Thank you, Tim Carney. Coming up, how you subsidize haircuts for congressmen. And the chosen ones don't like us taking pictures of that.
The Department of Agriculture wants to use our tax money to buy 400,000 tons of sugar to limit supply and boost prices so sugar producers can pay back government loans that they could default on. You follow me here on this? Okay. We loaned them money, and now we're giving them more money so they can pay back our loan. You still wonder why we're $16 trillion in debt? Anybody? Any questions?
No questions from me. Jay Leno gets that one exactly right. It's so absurd that it's fodder for a comedy show. But it shouldn't make us laugh because we pay for it. America's sugar producers are among the most privileged of the chosen ones. And they declined to come on this program to talk about their scam. We ask all the big sugar groups, the Florida Sugarcane Growers Cooperative, Colorado Sugar Beet Association, and so on, all said no. The U.S. Agriculture Department also said no. So to get an explanation for why sugar producers are the chosen ones and how their scam works, let's turn to Sally James, a trade specialist at the Cato Institute. So this costs Americans about $3 billion a year in higher prices.
Absolutely. It depends on the difference between world prices and domestic prices, but it's anywhere between $700 million to, in 2011, almost $4 billion a year.
And so it's not a direct subsidy, but a price guarantee. Explain it.
That's right. We don't actually give money to sugar growers except in exceptional circumstances like what Jay Leno was referring to. What we do is we shovel support to these farmers by keeping prices high, and the way we do that is by isolating the market. We limit domestic supply through something called marketing allotments, and we limit imports through quotas.
And how did this come to be? Because this is sugar. We're supposed to not like sugar.
Right. Well, we've had sugar tariffs since 1789, and there was a Sugar Act in 1934 that added to the program.
To protect the American sugar industry.
That's right. And it comes about through three main factors, all of them political. First of all, we have, if you like, a very powerful group that spends a lot of money on lobbying. They're a small...
The farm industry spends a lot anyway, but sugar spends the most.
That's right. Even though it's only about 2% of U.S. crop production, it actually spends about 30% of the lobbying money of the crop industries. The other problem with this program is it's hidden. It's not a line item on the federal budget. And there's unequal incentives to lobby. Okay, consumers pay a few dollars a year to maintain this status quo. They don't necessarily know about it. They certainly don't want to lobby.
You don't have an incentive to go to Washington
Where's the incentive
to complain
to do it? But the producers have huge incentives whenever people talk about reform to stop it, because they stand to lose hundreds of millions or billions of dollars a year if reform is implemented.
I also think it succeeds because it's complicated and boring. People can get their brains around it. Solyndra, you could see the building, solar panels, it's a line item on the budget.
Absolutely.
The GSA scandal where there's a guy in a hot tub with a champagne glass that gets people's attention.
Hot tubs are far more interesting than marketing price allotments and import quotas. Absolutely.
Now, David Stockman was on this program earlier talking about the great deformation, how these policies distort the economy. This does that too and just hurts poor people in other countries.
Absolutely. So the losers of this program, we know who the winners are, we know who the chosen ones are, but the losers are American consumers, not just you or I if we buy candy or sugar, but also candy manufacturers who have to pay more for sugar, and other countries who might export their sugar to the United States if they could, and that is a lot among some of the poorest countries in the world, in Africa, in the Caribbean, and Brazil, other countries.
And the beneficiary is like the Fanjul family, one of the richest families in the country. Brilliant lobbyists. They've lobbied me, very charming people. They say that you have to help us because these other countries, they subsidize their sugar producers. Without all this help, we can't compete with them.
If other countries subsidize their sugar producers, that means their sugar will be cheap. That's good. That's a gift to the American consumers. We should be thanking them.
If they want to rip off their taxpayers, we should freeload off
That's a problem for them, but we should be grateful.
Thank you, Sally James of the Cato Institute. Coming up, taxis on demand. A new app helps you hail a taxi, but the chosen ones want it banned. Taxi. In my town, you never know when or if you'll get a taxi, especially if it's raining. If only I could just pick up my phone, find a free taxi near where I am, and just book it. Actually, today we can in 25 cities thanks to a company called Uber. You can just open the app and you can see the cars around you that are free, available for hire. It's those black spots. If you've ever downloaded Uber, you can just get a car to come and pick you up within minutes. Prices vary depending whether it's rush hour or quiet hour. Consumers like the service. In just 3 years, Uber's grown from hundreds of users to millions. But every step of the way, Uber had to fight regulators. In D.C., San Francisco, Denver, they proposed rules that would have put Uber out of business. Why? Well, the regulators say they're concerned about safety and order, but always regulators end up in bed with the already established companies. It's why we call them for this show the chosen ones, the companies, that is. In this case, the chosen ones are the established taxi companies. Here in New York City, it's the yellow cabs. One reason there's often a shortage of them is that government limits the number allowed on the street. And thanks to that, the cabs that are allowed on the street are so busy that each taxi license is worth $1 million. And the industry lobbies politicians to prevent anyone else from picking me up. So when Uber showed up, the established taxi business was not happy. Travis Kalanick had to deal with that. He still does. He's Uber's CEO. So what's that been like?
Well, look, at this point, it's just part of what we do every day. Probably 25% of my time is spent dealing with the powers that be trying to squish innovation and stifle competition in the 25 plus cities around the world that we're in.
And it's counterintuitive because the idea of making it easier to hail a cab just makes sense from every direction, from the customer, from less cars idling empty and polluting. It brings people together. And it's not just taxis. We can remember that old AT&T phone monopoly. And this is all we could have, one phone. And AT&T fought to hold their monopoly, and there would be chaos and confusion if others were allowed to compete. And that's, in a way, the same thing the cab companies argue. It won't be safe. There'll be collisions on the street as people hustle to pick people up.
You know, what they're most upset about is not really the safety thing. They make that mostly a red herring. What they're worried about is that a high quality of service like a sedan, a town car, a limo can now also provide a very short response time. So you not only get the high quality of service, but you get it in minutes.
And you just had this fight in Denver recently. You just returned from there. They've proposed rules like your cars can't charge by distance?
That's right, because of course distance is evil, right? It's like telling a hotel you can't charge by the night. It just doesn't make much sense. But what they're trying to do is that rule plus a few others are trying to gut the ability for companies like mine to operate there.
We have some video from the fight in Denver where they're demanding these new rules. So let's see some of the people we interviewed.
We provide a service and safety to the public. It's not all about the money.
So it's important to make sure that taxis are able to continue to earn a living and not just have to compete with, just anyone that comes into the market.
this is creating a situation where they're basically, it's a free-for-all, where they can operate how they want, charge what they want, do whatever routes they want.
So she's a lawyer for the taxi industry.
Yeah.
The others were the taxi drivers. They're the ones who show up at these hearings. And what she says, it's everybody can do what they want, like that's a problem. And it reminds me what a Huffington Post tech writer said. Your company is a creepy, dangerous ideology. Let us do whatever we want. I thought that's good.
Typically, the folks who get most upset about what we do are folks who want the government to control and really monopolize major services in cities across the country.
Some cities have a price floor. In Nashville, the minimum ride is $40.
Yeah, Nashville, you got $40. Miami, $80. These are places we can't go
for a town car.
For a town car, and it doesn't matter if you go 5 minutes down the road. You've got to pay $80, and it's because of this that we haven't been able to roll out in Miami. But if you're in one of the cities where we are in, which is most major cities across the country, and you go to Miami, it feels backwards. It feels like you're living in the dark ages. And as innovation speeds up, this kind of regulatory capture that happens, this kind of sort of cartels that are allowed to exist, makes cities feel like they're really far behind the rest of the world.
But the politicians in charge don't feel that way. It's regulatory capture because they are close to the chosen ones, the established businesses. You had to hire lobbyists just because you couldn't even get to the politicians?
Well, sometimes you just to get a meeting with the folks that you need to talk to, you've got to go hire a lobbyist just to get in the meeting.
In my ideal libertarian world, it wouldn't just be town cars. I have a minivan.
Sure.
I ought to be able to just take a call when I'm bored if you pick somebody up.
Fair enough. I mean, look, there are models for those types of things, and
the market would sort it out.
The markets do generally sort these things out. I think there's a base level of rules you want in place, like the car's insured, and you have a driver's license and things like this, things that are truly related to safety. But beyond that, I don't think you need more regulation in most of these markets.
The market solves so many problems if the regulators will get out of the way. Thank you, Travis. And I should say there are other growing companies that freak out regulators in similar ways. For example, if I go out of town, I'm not allowed to rent my apartment to someone. But services like Airbnb and Roomorama now allow millions of travelers to book apartments like mine. What will the regulators do? We'll cover that in another show. But next, another stupid thing regulators do. Why can't you drive one of these cool new amphibious vehicles to work? As your government protects the chosen ones. That's next. No, I'm driving into the water. Well, wait a second. I press a button, and the wheels roll up. Now I've got a real boat. Cool, an amphibian vehicle. It goes fast on land and water. So, why can't you drive one to work? And why can't you drive one of these? It's a full-size car that does 30 miles per hour on water. And why can't you buy this bigger version? It would be great for rescue missions where rescuers have to go from water to land to get to a hospital. Why can't American fire departments buy it? Let's ask the daughter of the man who invented those vehicles, Debbie Gibbs. So, your father came up with these things, but why can't I buy them in America? Like the car, for example.
Well, the car was available in Europe where it was legal on the road, but in America it's not because we can't put airbags in a vehicle that's going to go on the ocean.
Because a boat hits the waves like this and the airbag would go off.
Exactly. In Europe they're more flexible. They have their system is based on outcomes rather than being as prescriptive. So as long as you meet a certain requirement in terms of the impact on the driver or the occupant, then they give you more discretion as to how you can go about achieving that result. They don't mandate the process.
They don't mandate airbags. They say as long as you have this or that to keep the driver safe. But you want to get into America because this is the big market, and there are more places where there's land, water together, and more recreational.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why we've launched the quad ski here, because we can do that
That's the yellow
legally.
thing that I was driving.
That's exactly right.
And so that's a recreational vehicle. You don't have to have an airbag. That you could get approval for in months in Europe, but here it took years.
In Europe, we could get it road legal within a matter of months because they allow quad bikes on the roads in Europe. In most states in America, quad bikes aren't road legal, so there's a lower threshold for requirement. It's an off-road vehicle.
So you can get it approved, but you can't drive it to work. You can't drive it on the road. And you say part of this is crony capitalism. The chosen ones, in this case, turn out to be the big three, the established car companies. They like the rules because they keep competitors like you out?
Well, I think that's largely why there haven't been any new car companies in the States for decades. While there are small production-run vehicles right through Europe and Asia, there haven't been any here. And it's because the regulatory requirements are so much more stringent. You know, when the regulations were written, nobody could even imagine such a thing as a high-speed amphibian. So it's outside of all of their categories and boxes, and that makes it difficult to be an innovator.
The military has been working on an amphibious vehicle for years, and they've gotten it so it'll go 8 miles per hour in the water.
Exactly. Well, they were trying to establish something faster than that, and they've spent, by the reports I've read, it looks like about $10 billion on trying to develop a faster amphibious vehicle. They've failed, and we've succeeded. We've created...
And you're going 30, 40 miles per hour.
Exactly.
Well, 8 miles per hour was their record.
Yep, I'm afraid we're sending our Marines into battle on World War II technology.
And I would think fire departments, it would be important because if they rescue someone in the water, they then have to transfer the body to a vehicle, which is painful.
Exactly. I mean, the trucks and the larger vehicles have been largely developed for rescue and first responder usage, and we feel that there's going to be a lot of lives saved by being able to pick people out of the water or go on rescue missions without having to be mindful of whether there was water between you and your destination. You could get them, no matter what the circumstances, rising waters, and get them straight from the water to a hospital without having to transfer them.
At least you got approval for the recreational vehicle.
Exactly.
This thing I'm driving, but I noticed it's got at least 29 warning labels.
Well, that was, as I've mentioned to you, the whole tort and liability issues in the States require that your manual be so epic that barely anybody bothers reading it in order to try to cover any foreseeable circumstance and any silly thing that somebody might think of.
So aren't we safer because of all these rules and lawsuits?
I doubt it. I very much doubt it. I think innovation and allowing people to be as creative and utilize new technologies is what's going to make us safer.
I agree. Thank you, Debbie Gibbs. Later tonight, I'll confront Glenn Beck. How dare Beck call himself libertarian after supporting bank bailouts, the drug war, and the Patriot Act? But now he claims he's a libertarian. We'll see. That's later, but next, Kennedy reports on the privileges of the chosen ones we call congressmen. There are the chosen ones, and then there are those who choose who the chosen ones are. And that's Congress. And they, while they're at it, often take care of themselves. Special correspondent Kennedy went to Washington to check out some of their special privileges. She found some perks in the Senate's barbershop.
You can also get manicure, little waxing.
The Senate barbershop loses about $250,000 every year. Maybe that's why they didn't want Kennedy taking pictures.
No?
No. They kicked her out. At least the House barbershop was privatized a few years back. It stopped losing money.
Once again, even in the halls of Congress, you can find a way for the free market to work. And if we emulate this establishment in other operations of Congress, we can not only save taxpayers some money, we can set an example.
Pete Sepp of the National Taxpayers Union wonders why the Senate doesn't privatize too.
The sergeant at arms here keeps saying, I'm going to get to it, I'm going to get to it. Part of the problem is some very expensive legacy employees getting paid $70,000, $80,000 a year.
Members of Congress also get custom-made furniture. The head of the cabinet shop makes
upwards of $100,000 a year.
That can be the price tag if you want to produce custom pieces that the senators want.
Another thing Congress gets is an exclusive subway system.
Like many public transit systems, a lot of the cars are empty.
What is the one area that's not even on the map that most people are so curious about?
The House Members Fitness Center.
Ah, that's where Paul Ryan sculpts those abs.
That's right.
Can we go there?
We can try.
But it's so secret that after searching for an hour, they couldn't find it. Finally, when congressmen want to fly somewhere,
they have privileged parking here at the National Airport, and they can get in and out very easily.
Hi.
Kennedy tried to park there too.
Can I park here?
No, ma'am, you can't. You can park in the garage.
Oh, well. I guess we're not the chosen ones. Can't park here.
Now, we're not the chosen ones. We're just the media, and you could argue that these people are doing the nation's business. They need to go home a lot. They deserve a special parking lot.
Oh, that is such baloney nonsense, and you know it, and I know it. Their base salary is $174,000 a year. They don't have to pay for travel. They get $1,000 a month in the house to lease a car. And basically all the things that you and I have to pay for that eat up our salaries, that doesn't exist for them. They live in a bubble.
They're paid $174,000, but they don't pay for anything, and with benefits, it's about $280,000.
Exactly. That's their base salary. It's close to $300,000 a year. My heart is just breaking for them. No, they're living in a bubble. And there are people say, well, you need the best. You need to make Congress attractive so the best people in the country want to run for office.
Right.
And my retort to that is, this is the best? The milk cliff and the fiscal cliff and sequestration? Really? This is the best you could have given us?
Let's go to the small stuff. The barbershop you visited. The house privatized.
Yes.
It makes money.
And it's got cheaper haircuts. The Senate barbershop, they run a deficit, an annual deficit of close to $400,000 every year.
Because anything run by the government loses money?
Exactly. The Sergeant at Arms says they are in the process of privatizing, which could take millennia.
Other privileges, franking. They get to send out free mail propaganda. It's one of the reasons incumbents really are thrown out. The top guys spend $300,000-$400,000 a year on that.
Send home some emails. If you're spending $400,000 a year re-educating your constituency, you're spending way too much money. Do it digitally. It's free.
It was worse. They used to be able to kite checks.
Every lawmaker used to have his own gold-plated shaving cup in the barbershop, and they've gotten rid of that. Wow, that's a
progress. Thank you, Kennedy. Next, something very different. Glenn Beck now says he's a libertarian. How can that be true? He supported the bank bailout and warrantless wiretaps. I will confront him about this claim. Next. And now for something completely different. This year, Glenn Beck said he's a libertarian. Glenn Beck? I want him to be libertarian because he's popular. He's got millions of followers. His success on radio and TV gave me hope. He talked about reading Milton Friedman, Frederick Hayek. He opposed the GM bailout. But then he supported TARP. Worse, he said $700 billion in stimulus money is not enough. He supported the Patriot Act, warrantless wiretapping. And at the Republican primary, his candidate was the anti-libertarian Rick Santorum. So, Glenn, now you email me and say, I have been moving closer to libertarianism with every day. That's good news. What do you mean?
I've always considered myself a libertarian-leaning Republican. I've just completely given up hope on any kind of Republican that would actually get it. The Republican Party is a waste of time. So I haven't really changed a lot of the things that I've believed in. For instance, you got a few things wrong. I was never for the stimulus. Never for the stimulus.
This quote, $700 billion is not enough?
Must have been in jest, because there's no way. I was never for that.
Okay,
TARP, I was for 2 days. I came out on a Monday and said, I'm for TARP because it's going to give time for people to prepare, because this is going to be really bad. Then I saw them put it together, and I saw what they were going to do, and I saw that they were going to just bleed us dry. And I said, by Wednesday, absolutely not. This is this is corporate welfare. The Patriot Act I was for. I was stupid. But I was always for the Patriot Act with sunsets, which wasn't far enough, should never give them enough power. I was wrong on that one. Warrantless wiretaps, absolutely wrong on it. Again, I was caught up in the whole war thing, completely foolish to trust government. So what I said to you in that email, John, was the only thing I've really changed was slowly but surely I've lost my entire faith in government having any answer or being square or decent at all. I don't believe that they have the individual at heart. I believe they have their power at heart. It was foolish of me to think otherwise.
And why Santorum?
Well, that one was because I believe that he was the only one out there that really kind of understood the war that this government was waging on religion, in particular this administration. I wasn't happy with any of the candidates. In the end, I was supporting Romney. I wasn't happy with any of them. I thought all of them, except for Newt Gingrich, were much better than the choice of Obama. That's what I was going for.
Okay, so, and part of your journey towards liberty, the drug war. When I interviewed you when I was in 2020, you said we just can't legalize this stuff. You've changed your mind?
No. I still don't think we can legalize it overnight. I believe in reverse engineering this. The drug war is a failure. In my understanding of where I'm at now, John, is not that we can, that people will be any better with drugs than, what we are. I mean, I'm an alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic, so I speak from experience here. What my problem is not the people using the drugs. It's the people who will then see a drug user in the street and force me to pay for rehabilitation for that person. If that person wants to kill themselves by using drugs, that's their business, and I have no problem with that. The clarity has come that we are out of money. We don't have any money. This is clearly working as well as Prohibition did. What are we doing? Stop.
And some libertarians were hassling you, demanding some litmus test?
I mean, look, the thing is that somebody said, you're hijacking the libertarian. Hijacking what? Hijacking what? A non-political movement? I mean, especially what I really don't understand, John, is you and I have always gotten along. We disagree on things. But I don't understand when somebody says, hey, you know what? I'm moving your direction. I will admit, what did I do? The Patriot Act and warrantless wiretaps. I was wrong on those. I'm moving your direction. I'm a big defender against the drones, and I was under the Bush administration. Okay, I'm moving your direction. Why would you, instead of embracing them and saying, come on, brother, you still got some things you got to take care of, but come on in, why instead do people stand there and say, we don't want you? Well, that's going to give you 1%. And it's going to continue to give us the two choices of the Republican and the Democrats. They're working together. Well, they don't have a lot in common except progressivism. Can't we have liberty in the varying degrees of that in common and try to get people to come closer to liberty?
I hope so. And I want you, among libertarian issues, war is big. You said Iraq and Afghanistan. We went into Iraq to prevent World War III. We have to succeed there. The problem I have with libertarians is they want to stop everything and come home.
Change of opinion here, big change of opinion. Best way to explain my opinion is when you have to go to war, go in, pound them, and then go home. We're not rebuilding you. We're teaching you a lesson. Don't screw with us. We won't screw with you. Period. That's it. The best way to get people, and this is a really evolving and really pretty solid understanding now the reason why we were given the Statue of Liberty as a gift is because we paid attention to our stuff and not everybody else's stuff. On our money, new lesson that I learned in the last year and a half. On our money, when we first started minting it, it didn't say "In God We Trust." It said "Mind your business." I think we should put that back on our money. Our problems have been...
Did it really say "Mind your business"?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. The first money said "Mind your business." I love that. And if we would do that, more people would want to come towards us.
And then some quick ones. Foreign aid?
No.
Abolish it. End it.
Yes.
The Fed?
Abolish it.
Gambling? Legalize it?
I have a problem with it. It's a vice, but I don't really care. I mean, you know, Vegas is still standing, whatever.
Sex work? Prostitution?
Have a problem with that when I'm not there.
Okay. Gay marriage?
Always been there. Whatever. It's your business. Don't change my church and say my church has to marry people. I won't tell you that your church doesn't have to.
Glenn, I welcome you to libertarianism and moving more toward it, I hope, all the time.
I would love to have some longer conversations with you, John, because you have been in this space for a very long time. I still have a lot to learn, but I will tell you, it's refreshing to talk to somebody who will welcome somebody with open arms. And even though a lot of stuff is wrong about the internet, I am willing to admit when I have been wrong and try to correct it.
Well, I'm glad you're on board. Now that you're a libertarian, we just need to convince 7 billion other people. And we'll keep trying.
Well,
we're out of time for tonight.
Be nice.
See you next week.